Lust is something many Christians struggle with, but it's rarely talked about, honestly. When Jesus speaks about lust, he doesn't shame people, and he doesn't pretend temptation isn't real. He speaks directly to the heart, and he shows us how we're called to respond. First, something important needs to be clear. Temptation itself is not sin. The Bible tells us that Jesus himself was tempted in every way, yet he did not sin. So temptation alone isn't the problem. It's part of being human. Sin begins when temptation is welcomed, entertained, or acted upon. That's why Jesus says lust happens in the heart, not when attraction appears, but when desire is chosen, when we dwell on it, replay it, and stay there. Lust isn't about noticing someone, it's about dwelling. That's why scripture tells us to guard the heart, because what settles in the mind eventually shapes our actions. The battle always starts earlier than we think. The Bible also tells us to be practical. Job said he made a covenant with his eyes. That's a decision made before temptation shows up. And when Jesus says to cut off what causes us to sin, he's not telling us to harm ourselves. He's telling us to take temptation seriously. In real life, that means removing content that stirs lust, unfollowing accounts, not scrolling late at night, and avoiding situations you already know lead you there. The Bible never tells us to test our strength. It tells us to be wise. When temptation does come, scripture doesn't tell us to argue with it. It doesn't tell us to analyze it. It tells us to flee, put the phone down, change rooms, get up and move. Walking away isn't weakness, it's obedience. But the Bible doesn't just tell us to remove lust. It tells us to replace it. If you remove temptation but leave your life empty, it comes back stronger. That's why scripture tells us to fill the mind with what is pure and good. Discipline, routine, work, and purpose weaken lust over time. Self-control is built daily, not in one moment. Jesus also tells us to watch and pray so we don't fall into temptation. Sometimes prayer isn't about removing desire instantly. Sometimes it's about slowing down, becoming aware, and choosing differently. Even a short prayer can break an impulsive moment. Christianity doesn't promise a life without temptation. It calls us to be watchful, disciplined, and honest. Growth doesn't happen overnight, but every time you guard your heart, flee temptation, and choose self-control, you're walking the path Christ called us to walk. Christianity isn't about pretending temptation doesn't exist. It's about learning how to respond to it rightly.